this is the day of love, and you express it in many, many ways, including flowers, mainly flowers. We know flowers, or language of love, or flowers. We've invited the CEO of the Kenya Flower Council, Clement Tulezi, to come and join us, and let's talk about flower production and the flower markets for Kenya. Clement, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you, thank you.
We had said earlier, if Clement comes here and he doesn't come with flowers, we will tell him, just go away. Nini mekuleta kama si maua.
We always look at quality. Mm-hmm. We always want it to be fresh. So they're harvesting this morning because we harvest every day, every morning, sometimes in the afternoon twice. And so they will arrive here fresh as you like them.
Good save.
Yes.
Good save.
Flowers are on the way.
Yes.
Ndu.
Yes.
Flowers are on the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Usiseme ati what did
Eric didn't give me flowers.
What did I get you? Clement has just said.
Yes. Your flowers that you're giving to me are on the way.
Flowers are coming.
Okay. So.
Welcome. This week, City is in Angola, and the proverb for today is, the squirrel does not talk back to the elephant. How do you interpret that one, Clement? The squirrel does not talk back to the elephant. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I could say, I think the elephant is too big for the squirrel. Mm-hmm. So they are not operating on the same wavelength. Mm-hmm. So how do you talk back to this gigantic creature that you don't have an impact on? However, if you get into a duel, you are certainly not going to win. But also, on the other hand, I could think probably the squirrel is more crafty than the elephant. And therefore, it's much more of a strategy than depending on the strength that the elephant has.
So it doesn't talk?
So it doesn't talk. It goes back just to the strategy and applies it.
Actions speak louder for the squirrel than words. One of the actions is enter the trunk.
Yeah.
Enter the elephant's trunk.
Trunk, yes.
And it will hear you. Well, thank you for that interpretation. Now, please tell us what the Kenya Flower Council is and what it does.
The Kenya Flower Council is a business membership organization for growers and exporters and value chain actors in the floriculture subsector. Largely, the sector is driven from a private sector perspective. Yes, we have some support from government, but on day-to-day, we manage our business as private sector. So Kenya Flower Council plays that critical role of really driving the sector. We always say that we are about 4 organizations into one. So we are a business membership organization. So everything that you expect a business membership organization to be doing for a crucial sector like these, we do. But we also own a scheme because the sector we work in is highly regulated, both here and in the marketplace. Just to understand, the marketplace is the international market, and therefore the question of the standards become very, very crucial. Kenya Flower Council Flowers and Ornamental Sustainability Standard is one of the best 2 standards in the world on cut flowers and ornamentals. So we own that standard. In other countries, the running of a standard is also left to other people. We call them third-party players. But we run it ourselves. And the 4th is that we are a certification body. That means we can do certification across many other certifications. And therefore, we are 4 organizations is to one, but internally we have demarcated how we work because we are also audited internationally to prove how independent all those different facets of the organization work without interference from one to another, because you don't want to have a standard that internationally people believe that it's your standard and it has any influence over those whom you certify. And therefore, we have systems that we have put across the board to understand that we have a relationship, but we don't have crossovers in terms of influence. So we are a big organization in terms of what we do, and we have been able to drive this sector for the last 28 years to get to where we are. And today, Kenya is among the top 2 or 3 growers and exporters of cut flowers in the world. It's not an easy feat. We have worked on it for quite many years, and we continue doing it every day, understanding what we need to do to support the growers, exporters, right from production through the entire supply chain up to the market. And we have a big name in the marketplace because we belong to institutions that really make decisions at the international level, but also the way we interact with the market at the regulatory body, regulatory level with governments and on trade, looking at tariffs and regulations and many others. We have made a huge impact in that area. So we cut across everything that you expect in the cut flower and ornamental sector.
Okay. Does the council and the 4 bodies that you talked about being meshed into one then look at this horticulture as with an external view only in terms of selling to meeting the standards of the global market, or are there internal policies as well as sales for commercial value within the country that are looked at as well?
We will say that at the moment, the international market remains the most important market for us. Almost 99% of everything we grow, we export to the international market. But we probably may be the only sector in Kenya that has something we call self-regulation. Because we are not just focusing on the market, we also want to show how ethical we are and how we do business here. So we have put in place our own systems, just looking at the code of practice internally to make sure that we comply as much as possible to what Kenyans expect from us. And we have always been calling to other sectors to borrow a leaf from us, what we have been able to do in terms of being really called a Kenyan sector. You know that many years ago when we started this, a lot of people focused on us as much more external sector than we are, because a lot of pioneers of growing cut flowers and ornamentals, most of them were not Kenyans. But today, over 50% of people who grow and export cut flowers in Kenya are actually Kenyans. And therefore, we have embraced this as a Kenyan industry. We try to run programs to promote the local consumption, but it has not taken as much traction as we would expect compared to the international. So as much as we drive certain programs and campaigns locally, the international market has remained stronger than the local market. So we have sometimes to pay much more attention to the international market, because you need to understand that the people I'm talking about are business people. They are looking at where they make most of the Kenya shilling, yes, or the dollar or the euro. That is where they will focus most. But we haven't forgotten the Kenyan, consumers. We always encourage as much consumption internally as much as possible. It's not that we have just made a choice to go international. If we had consumption locally that has taken traction, why would we be spending money going to Netherlands or in Germany or France or UK, wherever? I mean, that is a whole hassle that we can avoid if we do have a market internally in Kenya.
Isn't it a culture thing, though? And I think it's important to look at, because if we just look at a lot of the European countries, because I guess that makes up the bulk of the global market for Kenya, it's Europe.
Yes.
And if you want to do a comparison between what folks in that part of the world use flowers for and what they're used for here, it's incomparable. That, culturally, we as Africans would not use them in the same manner. Is that something that comes into play?
Yeah, it's true, but it's just in the mind. I always believe that you can always change your mind and start seeing things differently. People talk about, the purchasing power and all that. And I say, how much does someone in the UK spend purchasing a bouquet of flowers? Probably it's just an equivalent of some 300 Kenya shillings. How much are Kenyans spending on a Saturday in some club somewhere? probably is 10 times that or 20 times that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's just in the mind. I'm certain that we can be able to afford. So it's not a question of affordability. On the cultural thing, a lot of people, Kenyans are quite dynamic. They've traveled the globe.
Yep.
They've seen these things wherever they have been. So it is possible for them to change that culture and start embracing something different. I always say, probably where we have a much more better consumption, they have a much more longer life than we do because of the effect that flowers have on their life.
That's true.
The global studies have shown that mental health is becoming quite an issue.
Yeah.
And that is where we come in. We believe that we have a product that can be able to, in quotes, cure some of the challenges we have with mental health.
So in addition to, because here, if we look at what we use them for here, it's either weddings or a funeral.
Yep.
Very few people actually will buy flowers with their weekly groceries or whatever and put them in a vase, excuse me, and put them in the house. Or I'm going to visit a friend and I go with a bouquet. It doesn't have to be Valentine's Day. I can go with a bouquet of flowers just to say hello to a friend.
Yeah.
We don't do that though. We use them for those two major events or when there's a function. That's when you'll see flowers
That's
come
when you
out.
see flowers.
Yeah, but why do you do it? It's still mental because someone has lost a loved one. So you go there with a bouquet of flowers and you're saying, okay, this is just to express my feelings. It will get better. It will get better. So look at these flowers, the next 1 week or 2 weeks, just to soothe your mind that yes, you've had this loss, but it's possible that things will get much better as time goes. We can do that every day in our houses. We can do that while visiting friends and whatever. We can still express the same thing. So why don't we do it every day?
Has
Valentine's gives us an opportunity.
Has the Kenya Flower Council ever attempted to create a local market?
We have set up something called the Kenya Flower Vendors Association. It's basically an association of florists in the major cities or major towns in Kenya, just helping to drive an understanding of what flowers actually mean. What if you put these in your house in a vase for 1 week, 2 weeks? What it actually means to you? And we have run a number of messages, including now we have a 14-day where we're running messages on Kenyan flowers and what it actually means, not just for economy, at a social level, what it actually means. So we run a number of programs here with the local florists, just to drive a bit of uptake.
Okay.
But as much as we've done that,
what's the outcome of that? Are
we
you
have
able to
moved a
quantify?
bit. We have moved a bit. That's why I left the 1% for Kenya. Many years ago, probably 10 years ago, it was almost zero. Because if you compared what people buy from the city market and elsewhere, compared to the total volume, it was almost nothing you can talk about. Today, we have left about 1% that we consume here. And we believe we can be able to move it to 2-3% for Kenya and also within the region and the continent. The continent has also remained behind. Why would we every day be flying these, looking for new markets in as far as Korea and Malaysia and the rest? And we have just Nigeria. I consider Nigeria the next door.
Okay.
Congo,
So
or whatever.
what has the Kenya Flower Council done? So we're talking about growing the local market in Kenya, within East Africa and within Africa.
Yeah, within the continent. We are working closely with our foreign missions in Angola, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Congo, just to start with those four, because they are closer to the market than we are on a daily basis. They give us intelligence. They link us up with the buyers in those markets. The biggest challenge has also been with logistics, how we are able to move this product fresh as we want it from here to Angola. So movement of this produce and what we call the inter-Africa connectivity on freight is a big challenge. It's easier for anyone who will think how to connect from Nairobi to Amsterdam. 8 hours, 9 hours, you are in Amsterdam, and from there, the product is distributed as quickly as possible, because logistics are easier, but also the distribution lines have been worked on for a long time. So they are very, very smooth in terms of movement, because we are dealing with a perishable product that must reach the destination as quickly as possible. If I were to move this to Luanda, for example, how do I move it? You have to move it from here probably to Ghana, then from Ghana, where we do not have the cold chain to maintain.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
We don't have direct from here, for example.
To Luanda.
Yes, those are the challenges that we constantly have with the continent.
Okay, let me ask if I can. Because what we're talking about here essentially is that, from what we understand, horticulture is floriculture is one of the major foreign exchange earners for the country.
That is true.
Today.
Yes.
Right? We're also looking at a market in Africa whereby, if you ask me, if we're able to get the infrastructure in place, the European market would pale in number of dollars that could come into Kenya.
Yes.
I remember taking flowers from here for my sister's wedding in Nigeria. Now, one might ask, why would you have to do that? We're looking at Kenya's weather temperatures are perfect for growing a lot of the flowers. That's why you have it anyway. Yes. And also, if you look at the wedding industry in Nigeria, we're talking about a $70 billion a year outfit. And that's just one country. Like you said, there's Angola. There are other countries in the middle belt of this continent that would want things like this. So like I said, would far outweigh the dollars that are coming in from Europe. But what we are saying now, essentially, is that the infrastructure is not in place to have a major trade benefit coming into the country, and we're not able to handle that.
Yes.
And I would have to ask, why are conversations not being had, not just at embassy level, but much higher up at government trade level, whereby this is virgin territory that can be tapped properly to make sure that things are happening?
I agree with you. We have the Africa Free Continental Trade Area Agreement that is the instrument that we can use. So on paper, we have the instrument, we have the tools, but in terms of actualizing, so we have two challenges. The first one I've mentioned is logistics, which in terms of movement across borders, it's not been harmonized, and even just the connectivity. All the major airlines, they don't think about connectivity in Africa. It's a challenge. Have you heard of one day when the Kenyan football team was going to play somewhere in Cape Verde, and they had to take 2 days to get there? I don't know, go to Middle East, Europe. Somewhere in Dubai, move from there to Paris, then from Paris, and they're coming back onto the continent. It's just shocking. The secondly is being able to harmonize what we call the phytosanitary protocols and what, the border controls. When you show up with flowers from Kenya, in Nigeria, for example, and Nigeria is asking, where has this come from? Our NPPO, the National Plant Protection Organization, has not harmonized itself or had a link with the counterpart in Nigeria. So how do they understand that this has gone through the necessary checks and they can be allowed? That is what we have done with the EU. You have seen we have signed the instruments that have created what we call the Economic Partnership Agreement with the EU. And this will give us a quota-free, duty-free access to the European market for a long time. What it means that if you show up with a product grown in Kenya, no one in the EU is asking you, what is this? Or has it gone through all the checks? Because we have been able to harmonize our protocols across in Kenya and the EU. Those are some of the things that we need to do in the shortest time possible. And it's a huge market. Africa is a huge market. I can tell you Nigerians are ordering flowers from Netherlands. But where are these flowers coming from? They are Kenyan flowers, because 40% of all the flowers in Europe are Kenyan. So you can be sure that out of every 4 flowers, 10 flowers, 4 are actually from Kenya. So they are actually ordering products that are coming from the continent.
Clement.
But it has all the way to go to Netherlands.
Are you saying that the deals that have been signed, for example, the Africa Free Continental Trade Area and the others in the region, do not address these issues.
They do, but it's just paper.
So it's
At
just
the
on
practical
paper.
level, not much has
So
moved.
the next thing is now to move it to the practical level.
Exactly.
And those in the industry, those who understand their various sectors, have a role to play.
Yes.
And I still come back
That
to the
is
Kenya
where
Flower
we need
Council,
government, yes.
as Kenya Flower Council, because you understand what the needs are and what the pain points are and what you have good experience with the European market and other markets, then you go to government and advise the government, these are the things that we need. Have you done that? Have you gone to government and said, this is what we need, for example, to sign with Nigeria so that we can access that market?
That is very
or to
clear.
sign with other countries that
Yes.
we can access.
That is very clear to government, both to us in private sector and government, what needs to be done. But it takes a while for some of these wheels to start rolling because of other factors that we may not have control over as private sector. Ours is to be able to put this in front of government and say, this is what we require for these things to move. And it's not, when we talk about that, away from Africa, we have potential in many other countries. I can tell you, Korea, for example, we have studies, we have looked at Korea, the potential that is there. But Korea has 24% tariff on Kenyan flowers. As much as you have the market there, how do you really compete when you have your next competitor, a different country, who are at zero? China, on our flowers, the tariff is between 4% and 24%, depending on which flowers. India, for example, have banned, they have banned export of flowers from Kenya and many other countries into India, roses and carnations. But on the rest of the flowers, there is a 60% tariff. How do you actually compete? So I can go on and on. Many countries, Turkey, for example, is a huge market for us. We've had discussions here together with government, but nothing has moved. There is a whole 36% tariff. Ukraine, believe you me, it's a huge market for us. And they have a 52% tariff on Kenyan flowers. So as much as we want to diversify the market, there are things that are drawing us back. This industry can move into double digits in the next 10 years. We are certain of that. If we just touch certain things that are very crucial to this sector. We have grown, as horticulture, we are neck to neck with tea in terms of foreign exchange. But for horticulture, flowers is a whole 72%. We are certain that in the next 10 years, if certain things are attached, and we can talk about all those things, we can move this into employing close to 500,000 people in a very, very short time if we touch some of those things.
What's our current global market share?
At the moment, our global market share is just about 8%.
8 or 80?
8%.
08.
Yes, 8%.
Wow. Okay.
And we call it 8 because it could be much more than that. But what we do is that we export raw material. And this raw material is owned by someone else who move it elsewhere. So the 8% probably is just what we do much more direct. But if you look at what Netherlands, for example, exports, so we are talking about export, not in terms of production.
Yeah.
Production is much higher. As I said, 40% of all the flowers in Europe are from Kenya. And therefore, in terms of production, it could be in the realm of 34%. Okay. But on the other hand, when you look at exports, because we export raw materials, we export to majorly through Netherlands, who takes ownership and then re-exports. Then at that point, it becomes their product. And therefore, it changes a lot of things change.
I'm sure many people are hearing and wondering.
Yes.
Talking about exporting raw material,
yes.
Flowers are raw material. What does that mean? I mean, does it mean... Please explain. When you say we're exporting raw material...
There is what we call value addition.
Okay.
What we do on the farm here, we grow, then we process to some level in the pack house, and then we pack and we export. At that moment, when it gets to the destination, they unpack and then value add. They do bouquets, they do much more finished product now for the end consumer.
Okay.
At that point, they take ownership of the product, and then it becomes their product which they can now export in any part of the continent. So largely, yes, it's a flower, but at the end of the day, when it arrives to the consumer, it has changed its form. And that is now what we call value addition. We are looking at a possibility of that happening here much more. And we think we will get much more value out of it. We'll create more jobs by that happening.
Why don't we do it?
We have started in a small, you have seen companies starting to do that much more because of the challenge that we have, especially in Europe. As far as labor is concerned, there is shortage of labor, and labor is also expensive, and also the challenge around fuel. So there is now a quest to shift that from Europe to happen in Kenya. At the moment, we are seeing a few companies now starting to add value here. But if we can move it to a proportion that is quite huge, say 80% of everything we produce can be finished here, we'll get much more value out of what we sell, but also create more jobs for Kenyans. So it will take time. It's about just creating an environment that will attract investors to see what they need to do this end, because it's all about technology now.
What does it take to add value to the flowers? I can see in tea, value addition would be in all those things, blending, and so there's heavy machinery, there's a lot of investment. Flowers, if you're making bouquets, what do you need as an investment to
basically
it's
the assortment. You need a huge assortment,
and
that is where we have started moving. Many years ago, we have been known just as a rose growing country. Close to maybe 60, 70, 80% of everything we grew then were roses. But we have seen now a growth in the outdoor flowers. And that means that when you're looking at an assorted bouquet, it has roses, but it has many others. So when we start moving into diversifying our product range, then people will see that we can finish those bouquets here. The other countries that I'm talking about, like Netherlands, are attracting flowers from all over the globe, and they are able to mix all these roses from Kenya, but also flowers from elsewhere to create the bouquet that is needed. We have a new generation of consumers who are not just looking at buying roses. They want a flower that has all manner of assorted flowers in that one bouquet. That is what we are missing here. So when we start moving into diversifying our product range, found in Kenya, I think there will be much more value for investors to see that we can finish those products here.
But we
are slowly moving towards that as most growers now, many growers who are joining now are moving into the outdoor than just looking at the roses.
So those flowers are actually being grown already. You've mentioned carnations, the lilies, sunflowers, all of these other things that can be grown, because I think that's what has been established the world over, that anybody today who is not going into value add is actually then on the lowest rung of the totem pole here, because you will not be able to be commercially viable if you do not. And we have seen, I know for a fact that there are very many options here in Kenya for that kind of assortment of arrangements. It can be done here, and all the materials are here. Your floral frogs are here, all kinds of things are here, your mesh, all of those things are available in Kenya right now, that you can actually have a finished product ready for the world market in a very short period of time. But I think the same problem, and you can stop me if I'm wrong, the same problem that dogs many other things where we're not able to get our foot off the pedal is to just actually sit up and implement it. We know growing flowers is not like maize. They produce quickly. You harvest fast. You told us you harvest twice a day, So we know that to produce them doesn't take a long period of time. The temperatures are adequate. That's why they do so well here. So the question is, that implementation devil that seems to be sitting on the shoulders of very many things in our countries is what stops us from just getting it done.
Yeah, that is true.
Why can't we just do it?
Kenya is among the few countries in the world where you can grow flowers commercially. And probably we are just talking about 4 major countries in the world: Kenya, Ethiopia, Colombia, and Ecuador. The altitude that we have on the equator can only be found on those 4 countries, not any other. So when everything is held constant, Kenya will always be a dominant player as far as cut flowers, production of cut flowers and ornamentals for commercially is concerned. So we have a huge potential, and our skills level, I think we could be one of the very best in the world in terms of the skills that we have on growing cut flowers and ornamentals. I always say that the Dutch invented cut flowers, but we have perfected the art of growing it. So our understanding of what we need to do, it's actually unmatched. So it is possible that we can move into all those areas of value addition and even grow almost every kind of flower that you can think about. Very few flowers we cannot do here. Almost 95% of all the flowers that are traded commercially can be grown in Kenya. It's just being able to move that to create an environment where investors see that potential and are able to put in much more resources into doing that. And moving now, we'll not be talking about raw material, we'll be talking about creating finished products, moving right from Kenya straight into the consumer, be it going to a supermarket, be it going to a florist, or be it going to an event or whatever it is. Do you know, if you don't know, that the royal weddings, 2 of them, the flowers that were used in the recent royal weddings were actually grown in Kenya, straight from Kenya. So that is the kind of
so this is what we know we have. So please let me understand, Clement. We globally, our production is over 30% of the global flower production.
Yes.
So we are growing flowers anyway.
Yes.
The only thing we are not doing is diversifying what flowers we are growing. But then you're saying that we need another conducive environment so we can then grow those other flowers. I don't get it. If we are already growing flowers and we're already leading the world in growing flowers, what's making us not grow those other flowers which can grow here?
Yes.
They're just not doing it.
We are not just doing it.
They're just not doing it.
We can't do
that's
it,
you
Eric.
people. I mean, that's not us. That's the citizens. It's not. Is it government?
No.
Is it not you? Is it not your members?
Is being able to attract those kind of investors.
Oh, hang on a minute. So you're saying in order to grow this flowers, which then would make
Which
up
are
for
not
the
roses.
diversification process, you need somebody to come and put money in flowers which are not roses.
Yes.
You need somebody to come and put money in so that those flowers can be grown here.
Be it Kenyans or non-Kenyans, we all call them investors.
Yeah.
So they need to see the potential that is there. They need to understand their investment, if they would get the returns back.
Yeah.
So looking at the business environment, for example, in Kenya, and how it's supporting their business becomes very, very crucial. Today we are talking about the investment and business environment.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that we can do to continue attracting much more investment into the sector. A lot of people sometimes ask me, is Ethiopia a competitor? And I say yes. But Ethiopia is only doing half of what Kenya is doing. When everything is held constant, Kenya is still the best place to grow flowers. But we believe that there are certain things that we can do together with government to create an atmosphere or an environment or climate that builds that confidence that indeed Kenya, the investment for anyone who wants to put their money into our sector, they will get back the returns, and there is a guarantee of that return in 10, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. Our sector is unique because we don't look at short-term benefits. We look at long-term. The people who started investing in the cut flower and ornamental sector many years ago, 30 years ago, are still doing it. And they are looking at another 100 years or 200 years. It's about generational. So it's not about the quick profits. And therefore, that confidence needs to be built among the investors that Kenya is still the best place. And so we can start moving into diversifying, looking at the knowledge that have been built elsewhere on a lot of these flowers, other types of flowers than the roses. We are looking at people investing real money into it.
Let me
because
ask-
money is a big thing when it comes to our sector. So
I hear you, and
we
I'm sorry,
need to be
I'm sorry
looking
to
at all
interrupt,
that. Yes.
But I've got to throw in this question at this point. In the last 10 years, Clement, how many investors have we gotten into the Kenya flower sector?
It's huge. As I said, the local investment for Kenyans has grown tremendously. 10 years ago, probably, we had very few players who are Kenyans.
Okay.
Now we are seeing a move, what we call the smallholders, who are not there. In a lot of cases, flower farms who are medium, large farms. Today, we have Kenyans who have a quarter an acre, 2 acres of flowers. And we are coming in as Kenya Flower Council to support them even on certification so that they can be able to aggregate and access the international market. So that segment, we have seen a growth of Kenyans really investing in it. On the foreign, you can look at our volumes. 10 years ago, we were just exporting about 30,000 tons a year. Today, we are 230,000 tons a year of export. And that tells you that there is much more investment. Of course, like any other business, we have had a few people falling out, but the growth has been much bigger than those who have actually fallen out. We also have seen a move towards consolidation, where we are seeing certain groups now growing, acquiring other farms that are not high performers. And that is just the maturity of the sector. So we can talk about, this farm closed, but out of one farm that closed, 4 actually opened. And that is why our market share has continued to grow. The volumes have continued to grow, and even the revenue has continued to grow. When I came into this sector in 2018, our value in terms of what we were selling was only 82 billion Kenya shillings. Today, we are over 120 billion Kenya shillings. And that just tells you that the trend is upwards in terms of investment.
So there's growth.
Production. Yes.
There's definitely growth. If we just look in the last 10 years, what you've said, the production just from external investors has grown up by 7 times.
Yes.
That means it's a conducive environment for investors to come in and invest.
Yeah.
But you're saying for them to stop investing in roses, we need another more conducive environment. And that's why I'm stuck. I'm just not understanding why we are not able to attract in the last 10 years or in the last 5 years or in the next 5 years to attract people who then come and invest in growing other flowers.
Eric, we need to look at the environment in two ways.
Okay.
We have the best ecological conditions for growing flowers. That is not in doubt. Okay? Everyone understands that. But on the other hand, we also have the business investment climate. That is where we need to touch most. The confidence for an investor is looking at, if I invest here, the policies, regulation, and everything, does it guarantee my investment over the next 20, 30, 40 years? That is where we need to touch most. So you need to demarcate those two separately. So on the ecological, environmental, it's perfect. Okay, so we understand that. But on the other hand, we need to have a conducive climate that is based on fiscal planning and money and everything that is conducive for this investor.
Okay.
That is where sometimes is lacking.
Right.
There was a quest some years back, about 7-8 years back, when Ethiopia opened up and said, the government is here, they will give you land, they will give you that. A lot of people also who are Kenyans, who are investing in Kenya, also moved to Ethiopia to start looking at that and see, is there a possibility of investing? Some of them are still there, but a lot of them also came back to Kenya because sometimes it's not as rosy as you think. Because governments always come in with some promises. Sometimes they are fulfilled, sometimes not. And that, for an investor, he has always to look at it every day, assessing against the long-term plan they have there for their business. This is the assurance we need to be giving to investors, current investors, and will-be investors in Kenya. Every day we need to be hearing that word of confidence coming both from the sector and the government on the investors, and then it becomes easier for anyone who is looking at investing to look at Kenya. I will also tell you something. A lot of the investors are also vertically integrated. So they're not just looking at their business as it is now. the looking across the supply chain, they have connections with other people, the people who they supply to. And therefore, if we are looking at value addition, for them to transit the processes that happen elsewhere into Kenya, they need that confidence. They need to be sure that as they're scaling up, they are looking at returns on their investment and the stability of that investment for a long period of time. That is what we are calling on the government every day to be reiterating to the investors that Kenya is the best place to invest. We are looking at your interest. We will put plans and policies in place that will safeguard your investment. That will give a lot of confidence for a lot of people to come and invest either in growing or processing or purely value adding on what we are doing. I hope, Eric, I'm making sense. You need to demarcate those two.
Well, can we look at some numbers really quickly? How much is coming into the country because of from the flower sector at the moment?
At the moment is an average of 110 billion Kenya shillings.
110 billion.
Yes.
This is per annum.
Annually.
Okay, 110 billion.
Yes.
Now, with the value add that we speak of, what's the potential that could come into the country?
The potential is that we can move this quickly in 5 years in the realm of about 200 billion.
So it could double. It could double with variety.
It could double.
And value with value add.
Yes.
It could double. So we're looking at another 110 billion.
Yes.
Annually in the next 5 years.
In the next 5-10 years. Yes.
Okay.
We can get there.
So the thing is, here it is that we say we want to bake a cake. We have all the ingredients to bake a cake, but they're not working together. They're all over the place, but we still want to bake the cake. And we're hoping at the end of the day that we will eat this cake. But then we're just not getting into the kitchen, if you ask me. That's just what's not happening. And everything that you need is right here. We're not even asking people to come from outside. It's right here that this money can actually be mopped up. So I just want to come back to that and say there needs to then be an insistence. It needs to be deliberate to say, look at the kind of, because these are the kinds of monies that Kenya looks for every day to be able to get certain things done. And we are saying that there is a potential in 5 short years, by the time there's another election, that you can actually have this extra money coming into the country on a yearly basis because we tinkered with a few things here and now. And I think that's the bane. We don't tinker when we should, and we lose out.
Yeah, that is true. It's simply just what needs to happen is that we have discussions as a sector, as private sector with government. Look at this sector and the potential that is there. Ask ourselves, if we want to get those to those double digits, what do we need to do? And they're not complicated things, I can tell you. For an investor is simple things that you need to do that you can just touch the button and it tricks their mind to think this is the best place for me to continue putting my money in. And therefore, just small things like looking at our sector and saying what kind of tax holidays or rebates can be given in certain areas to be able to spur up these. Are there areas of tax, both with the county government, with national government? Double taxation, for example, does it exist? Small things that we can do in a conversation. And when you touch those things, it becomes much easier. When you look at the entire supply chain, you're asking yourself at every point on production, you need inputs.
Yep.
What are we doing about it? You need energy because we are huge consumers of energy. What are we doing about it? You need water. Is there access to water? When you look at logistics, for example, do we have the right logistics to guarantee quick movement of this produce? And when you look at the market, are we doing enough promotion in the market to be able to demonstrate that Kenya is the best place
to invest?
Yeah, to invest. So all those things can be worked on very quickly.
They all
and
come
we
together.
can see a huge difference.
Well, the Cabinet Secretary for Trade, Miti, the Principal Secretary for Investment, they have heard you, and we hope that they'll engage you more and more. Thank you very much. Clement Tulezi, the CEO of the Kenya Flower Council, he's been our guest. Happy Valentine's Day.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.